Gilead Chair and Samieh El-Abd, thank you very much for joining us today. It's very generous of you to give us your time and share your experience with us. Um, I don't think you need introductions. The participants have received your bios and they know who you are. So I will start right away without much introduction. And I will ask both of you about the lessons of the past. I know both of you have said recently to me, have said it publicly. Gilad, you wrote an op-ed recently, and you both suggest that there is hope that actually Israelis and Palestinians can make peace. But before we get there, I want to go back a little bit because both of you have a unique experience in negotiation between Israelis and Palestinians. Gilad, you were the chief negotiator of Israel on the Palestinian track when Ehud Barak became prime minister. Ehud Barak was elected on a wave of determination to achieve peace with the Palestinians and with the Arab states also. And he promised to do this in a year. A year after his election, um, he lost his majority and had to call for elections and lost that election. And the lesson Ehud Barak drew from the experience, especially at Camp David, was that there is no Palestinian partner, that Israel has made, he has made the most daring proposal and the biggest concessions an Israeli prime minister had ever made, but there was no partner on the other side. And a lot of Israelis heard that and kept that as the lesson of negotiation with the Palestinians. Of course, since then, events have been confirming that there is no Palestinian partner to negotiate with Israel. Is this the lesson that you have drawn from your experience?
Not necessarily. And I think that we need to quote the full statement of Barak when we returned from Camp David with no agreement. He said, it seems that we don't have at this point in time a negotiation partner represented by a leadership that is ready for the concessions to be made on both sides in order to end the conflict and put a finality to all claims. If you look at the lessons drawn from 3 decades of the so-called peace process since the Madrid conference in 1991, you find out that very little time was dedicated to negotiating the core issues, the core contentious issues between Israelis and Palestinians, and through that, end the conflict. Jerusalem, the holy sites, the refugees, the territory, boundary, the settlements, of course, and the security arrangements. All these, if you compile all the periods during which the end of conflict was negotiated, you find out that perhaps 10% of the time was dedicated to that, not more than this. And for such a multi-layer, a multi-dimensional conflict, a complex conflict, protracted one, this is by all means not enough time. So
And how do
I
you
believe
explain that? How do you explain that so little time was given to negotiating those important issues?
they are very complex, very difficult. There is a lot of psychology in it, history, religion, politics, territory, just name it. Whatever you find in other conflicts, you find it in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And it's very hard for both the constituencies to accommodate for peace and for the leadership to walk towards peace. And if you look at the last half century of Israeli leaders, you find five leaders that were ready to walk this distance towards making peace with our neighbors. The first one was Menachem Begin as prime minister, who made peace with Egypt. Afterwards was, of course, Rabin, who signed the Oslo Declaration of Principle and the Oslo Interim Agreement, and of course the Treaty of Peace with Jordan. Then after that came Barak, who tried quite hard to resolve the conflict with the Palestinians instead of managing it, and Sharon, who pulled out from the Gaza Strip in 2005, and last but not least was Ehud Olmert as prime minister, with the Annapolis process of almost a year of very serious negotiations on permanent status, on ending the conflict. So, for me, the time is always ripe to do the right thing. And the right thing is to stop trying to shrink the conflict, to manage the conflict, and we need to resolve the conflict. Our conflict is workable, is feasible. The solution is feasible. I think that if you ask Samieh, you will get the similar answer. But it's not for the two of us to resolve the conflict. It's for the respective leaders of the region and of the moderate Western world to help out a resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Thank you. Let me push back a little bit before I turn to Samieh. There is no question that we need to resolve the conflict. I think everybody would agree that we need to resolve the conflict. The question is not about this. The question is about, can we resolve the conflict? If all those prime ministers tried to resolve the conflict in very different ways, gradually, Barak, who want to have a deal on everything at the same time, Sharon, who tried unilateralism, none of this has worked. So I'm asking you, what is the problem? What has been the obstacle from your side? What did you see as an obstacle to actually making those efforts reach their destination?
There's a myriad problems and myriad obstacles and multiple spoilers that you have to cope with. But the main obstacles are, on the one hand, the Palestinian violence and terrorism throughout the processes that we've handled here, and Israeli settlements, on the other hand, that did not stop. Nothing will happen if there's no security to both parties. So if you want to end the conflict and resolve all the core issues, you have to go step by step, gradually, towards changing the reality on the ground. Even if you don't reach a full-fledged comprehensive agreement that resolves all the core issues simultaneously, then at least you create little by little a different reality, a reality of two states for two people, without, even in the absence of a full-fledged agreement. So this is, I think, the way involves both the content of the contentious issues and the process leading towards resolving them. And we need to capitalize on the geopolitical changes and evolvement of that happened in the Middle East in recent years, and look at the not only at the exclusive bilateral Israeli-Palestinian resolution of the conflict, but the regional outlook and the international outlook and involvement, especially if we talk about the future, not only about the past.
Okay, thank you. Samieh, almost every time there are negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians, at the end of the session, Palestinian officials, negotiators come out and say, Israel is not serious about resolving this conflict. So is this the lesson you drew from the past, from your participation, since Oslo all the way to Camp David and beyond?
Yes, first, thank you for inviting us, especially at this time of the conflict that is taking place in our area here. But let me go back a little bit for what happened through Oslo. We started Oslo. Well, there are, in my opinion, 5 issues that they were violating the agreement in Oslo. The first is Israel withdrawal from the West Bank. The agreement listed phases of withdrawal from the West Bank. They were never completed. That's one. Secondly, they were, according to the agreement, that the dissolving of the civil administration, Israel has failed to do so. Third, maintaining the status quo. Israel continued to construct illegal settlements along with the settlement infrastructure to save the illegal, in our opinion, residing settlers in the occupied territory. Fourth, the issue of water, resources, and all they were violating the Palestinian rights to maintain control over the land. And the final one was, not only the final one, but in Jerusalem, also Israel's policy in Jerusalem violated its obligation not to take unilateral steps to change the status quo of Jerusalem. All those obstacles being made by not, implement what was agreed in Oslo, at least. And this is the core issue from our side, that this is the main issue that we could not reach an agreement. Because at the same time, we want to talk about peace, there are more settlements, there are more settlers, and more action in Jerusalem. But to go back to Camp David, which was, like I say, what was an attempt to us, I call it Camp David Plus. It was only, because Camp David took place in June 2000, but there is an addition to that was in December 2000 also.
Yeah.
So the summit could not have been succeeded because it lacks the necessary preparation. And I think both sides, we agreed on this, that needed to guarantee at least some minimal success. There were no Palestinian objection to the Camp David, to the principle of attending the summit. The only objection was, and it was conveyed to the Americans, that it would be an unprepared summit, and for the summit that was to discuss issues of grave importance, like the ones that Gilead mentioned, not to be properly prepared for was a cause of fear. One thing that happened, and I agree also with Gilead, that in Camp David was that Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak overcame his red lines, what we call it at that time, which is Jerusalem, which the Israeli side was not for discussion before, was in fact discussed at Camp David. And what was the discussion concerned? Jerusalem did not meet the minimum demands of the Palestinians yet, but the issue of sovereignty was discussed for the first time, even if it was in terms of shared sovereignty or limited sovereignty over certain areas. Still, we can say that the issue of Jerusalem was discussed in Camp David. There is another issue, like we mentioned, that the refugee issue was not really discussed in a proper way. On the issue of the settlement, and the Israeli insists of annexing the huge settlement blocks and killing a large number of settlers, that was also wide, the gap was wide during that time. All these factors that stand in the way of achieving agreement. This is one thing that happened, but if we look at what we call the other part of Camp David, of course, everybody was saying that we were partner in the Palestinian side. And most of those who attended that, they agreed that the Americans were not prepared at that time. But if we go to December 3rd, Mr. Clinton and the same team who was in Camp David, they came up with a proposal. We call it the Clinton parameter. And the Clinton parameter, which was submitted there in Camp David, was in 2000, I can read some of what happened in that, because that is a turning point, I think, in my opinion, Negotiation between Israeli and Palestinians took place from 19th to 23rd of December. And I think both we were there. I mean, of course, Gilead was heading the team at that time. I was an assistant to our team there. But the parameter were the compromises that Clinton believed to be the best possible within the margins of the position of the two parties. the Clinton parameter were meant to be the basis for further negotiation.
Yeah.
And
let me interrupt you. I just want to zoom out a little bit from the detail of the proposal. My question to you is, there have been all these proposals, all these attempts. Barak was elected in July 99. We had until the end of 2000. It did not work despite all the goodwill. Why? If you can pinpoint. So you said, number one, Israel didn't implement its commitments before. What are the main obstacles from your side?
Settlement and the issue of Jerusalem. Those are the main issues.
Okay.
The issue of settlement, that we continue to build settlement. When we signed the agreement in 1995, was 250,000 settlers there.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about 750,000 settlers.
All right.
And when you talk to anybody, they said, oh, there is no, the two states cannot work because of that. So you create the problem, and then you find it difficult to solve the problem. And they like the status quo, they like the conflict management. They can manage our life and all that. Our demand depends on three issues, in my opinion. We want our freedom, we want our dignity, and we want a better future for our children and grandchildren. Why they don't accept this by ending the occupation and to have our own state in order to live side by side with the Israelis?
Okay. So now you both mentioned two important issues. Gilead, you mentioned both security and settlement, and Samieh, you mentioned settlement. Gilead's point is that nothing is going to happen unless there is security for both sides, but unless there is security for Israel, Israel is not going to move. We agree on that, right?
Of course I do. At least in all the negotiation as a deal, we said we don't want to have a huge military in our side. We need some sort of law and order to be implemented in our state. Okay? We don't want to be militarized at all. But at the same time, we need to be secure as well. What about our security?
Okay, we will come to the Palestinian security in a second. But first, again, it's not about the desire. It's not about whether we want security for Israel or not. The question is, can the PA provide Israel with the security it needs? Because the PA, number one, doesn't control Gaza. Number two, the PA doesn't even control violence in the West Bank itself. We have all those factions, look at Jenin, look at Nablus. We have all those Palestinian factions that are kind of independent, right? So for Israel to enter into an agreement with the PA, for the Israeli public opinion, what would be the worth of that if the PA cannot provide security?
Right. What about that the Israeli government, and they did all statement in the book, how do legitimize the PA? They did everything they can do by building settlements, by having all the control over the resources. Even our money, our own money that was given to Israel, in order to give it to us, the PA cannot send the salary of their employee because our money is hostage. Every single day there is incursion inside area A, area B, you're limited to that. So you delegitimize one side, at the same time, you were empowering the other side in Gaza, okay? All the money was going to Hamas was through the Israelis. They were given that. So this equation cannot work, and you cannot blame the PA for not delivering what they want to deliver. There is a security coordination, okay? Many of those, as part of Oslo, were implemented, except Area C and the area for expansion for the Palestinian people.
All right, I get the point. Thank you. Gilead, so it's Israel's fault that the PA is not capable of providing security. What do you think?
I think that it's about time that we hear a more honest account on Palestinian responsibility for the situation. I'm trying to be to honestly look at the reality and the reasons for the failure of achieving peace. It's mostly a failure of leadership. And the fact of the matter is that throughout the process, there were several cross junctures in which Israel offered offered peace and offered to end the conflict. And of course, the consequence of ending the conflict is, of course, the end of the Israeli occupation in parts of the West Bank. And I believe that in all these junctures throughout the recent history, the Palestinians were not reciprocating in any way whatsoever, whether under Yasser Arafat as the chairman or under Mahmoud Abbas as the chairman. So it's very nice to poke, to poke in the eye of the Israelis and say, well, settlements and once again settlements, etc. But look at what's happening in the within the Palestinian Authority and the PLO and Hamas and the Islamic Jihad. I mean, you said it right, Zadine, that there's no governance except very lousy and corrupt government in the Palestinian Authority. There's no control of terrorism or violence and incitement, and this goes throughout the whole process. So I'm trying not to be to enter this blame game because it's not interesting. I'm not interested in that, and I did not respond to the claims made by my friend Samieh. But I can tell you that that in my opinion, the current crisis could provide an opportunity to resume negotiations in a much more gradual manner, but also in a way more promising in the integration of the Israeli-Palestinian resolution of the conflict within a regional context of a moderate Western and moderate Sunni axis that would allow the trade-offs in the Israeli-Palestinian resolution of the conflict to be assisted by other actors that are by the way, quite active currently to resolve the current crisis of the war in Gaza post the October 7th massacre by Hamas and Islamic Jihad. So I'm a great believer in processes. I believe in an organized, binding, continuous, hands-on process, and I believe that if we fail to look at the future as something that could be accommodated or carved out of a major horrific crisis, then we will never get there. It's very easy to fight one another. It's very difficult to make peace with one another, but we have to. This is it. We have to work in it. We have to put some work into it and time and funding, etc., to find out whether it's solvable, whether it could end one day, and then we look back and say, "Wow, it happened." We didn't see it, and now there's no conflict. What do we do next?
Thank you. It's this difficulty that I'm trying to grasp and also to help participants see. So it is not, we're not in the blaming game. We're in the problem-solving approach. So we have a problem, and the problem is security. And we all know nothing is going to move if there is no security. At the same time, today, we know the PA is not capable of providing this security. So the question becomes, what would it take for security to be provided? Gilad, you mentioned some elements right now. about other players in the region. Can you
Right.
explain what that is? And then
Sure.
Samieh, I'll ask you also to tell me what would it take for the PA and maybe for other players to provide that security. Okay.
Well, I think that the PA should be reformed into becoming a revitalized or a reformed PA in a way that would enable it to assume its responsibilities over the West Bank and the Gaza Strip and govern there efficiently. But as you correctly said, security is a key, and for security, the Palestinians, being a future state with no arms or demilitarized state, cannot provide security for itself and let alone for others. So I believe that we will need other actors to enter the ballpark. I'm talking about the Saudis. I'm talking about the moderate Arab states. I'm talking about the Egyptians. As you well know, as Edin yourself, the multinational force in Sinai that was established pursuant to the treaty between Egypt and Israel in 1979, then fulfilled its task quite efficiently throughout the decades that passed since then. And I'm talking about something like that, either an international force with, of course, with components of the regional actors, or a regional force, and we will need that in order to rehabilitate Gaza and reconstruct the infrastructures, etc. Once Hamas is not governing the Strip. It will take time. This is not a one-off effort. This is a prolonged effort of, I believe, 5 to 10 years to provide security that would allow Israelis and Palestinians to once and for all disengage the one from the other, under two nation states living side by side with a borderline between them.
Thank you. Samieh, what would it take?
Well, yes, security is a major issue, but in order to make real peace, you have to consider that also freedom and justice and independence are all major issues, okay? That need to be controlled. Yeah. Yes, I agree that the security is not only that we can secure ourselves or secure our neighbors. We need the regional responsibility to take place. We need the international community also to be part of that in order to help both of us, at least in order to make the security available for both people. Yeah. We need security as much as the Israelis need security. Maybe they are, they have their army, they have everything here. We need security. We want the regional party to be part of that. We want to include Saudi Arabia. We want to include all the Gulf states as well as Jordan and Egypt to be part of that. We want to include the international community in order to guarantee that was we agreed upon being implemented. Okay? Yes, we need the reform. I agree with you. Palestinians need reform. But at the same time, I'm not a blaming game or anything, but you need a reform on your side as well.
I promise we will come to the Israeli side in few minutes. Yeah. I'm just trying to get one problem at a time. So you're mentioning you agree with Gilead, we need regional involvement, we need international involvement in the security sector, right? Question is, what can, in your assessment, you grew up in El Bira in Ramallah, right? Yes. You're not a Tunis guy. So you know the West Bank inside out, and you also know what kind of leadership we have on the PA side. So my question for you, as an expert, you are Minister of Planning. If you're planning this, what are the prospects of success for a PA reform that would actually create functioning, effective security services? Something reliable, because people's lives depend on it, but also the political process depends on it.
Okay. I think the first thing, what we need the recognition of the state of Palestine in order for us to act as a state. Acting as a state is different than the PA and the PLO. You have to act as a state according to the international community. You have an obligation toward the international community. Then you have a reform as well to take place in order to have your jurisdiction issue, the executive branch as well, and to have the legal, what we call tashri'i, yeah. So, and the security that you have in order to give protection to that. When you act as a state within your boundary, then you have an obligation toward your neighbors, and you have to fulfill your obligation toward your neighbors, not only in security but in other issues as well, in education, in environmental issue, in social issue, infrastructure issue. We are interrelated with each other. You know, we're very close. Environment affected us. Water affected all of us. Even the sewage and all the infrastructure is interrelated with each other.
Okay.
So, but not to be as a PA and you have spoilers here, spoilers there, and you have difficulties in joining the two together and providing help to a certain side and preventing the others to act as an authority. All this can be demolished if we have an acknowledgement for the establishment of the state of Palestine. And I think the time everybody's talking about it now.
Yeah, thank you. I have questions and I invite the participants to type their questions, and I'll come to this question. There are questions about the role of Iran, the spoilers. There are questions about the narrative and recognition and the settlers. We'll come to all of that. But before we do this, I want to move to the other part of the story, the second basket, Gilead, which is settlements. So let's bracket the security for now. And I ask you the same question. All those prime ministers, Labour prime ministers, failed to stop settlement expansion. And if you remember, the 1 year plus few months of Ehud Barak saw unprecedented growth in settlement activity. So the first question is, why? And the second question is, what would it take for an Israeli government, obviously other than this current government, for a future Israeli government, what do they need to actually freeze settlement expansion and allow the Palestinians some breathing space so that they have confidence that this is actually leading to nationhood and independence?
So the answer is twofold. The first part would say the following. There is a differentiation between the settlements that are that compose the blocks of settlements, the large blocks of settlements that are adjacent to the 1967 lines and around Jerusalem. So within these boundaries of the blocks of settlements, that without defining them accurately, but I would say that large blocks of settlements adjacent to the Green Line, to the 1967 lines and around Jerusalem, leaves a population of about 70 to 80% of all the settlers. Okay, that's the largest, the vast majority of the settlers live in these areas. Let's say that, just imagine the security fence and the delineation of the security fence. What's westwards of the security fence would be probably, under any kind of agreement, will be probably annexed to Israel, most of it. And within that, we have the vast majority of the settlers' population. So we talk about differentiating these settlers who are not infringing with the contiguity of a future Palestinian state, and the other settlers that are either remote or isolated, or in the deepest areas of the Palestinian Authority or the Palestinian control. And we will have to negotiate the future of these settlers. We talk about more or less 100,000 settlers. So the question is, how could Israel relocate this large number of settlers, 100, maybe to 110, 115,000, and provide them with a secure future?
Do you have to relocate them to Israel? Can't they live, as Arthur Lieberman says here, can they live in a future Palestinian state as Jewish
depends on
citizens?
them. It depends on them. When you ask Israeli Arabs, for instance, whether they would like to live under Palestinian governance, said, God forbid, we never would like to do that. We identify ourselves as Palestinians. We are 20% of the Israeli population. We are Israeli, Arabs, Muslim, or Christians, but we would like to live under Israeli rule and not under Palestinian rule. Yeah. So just look at them and look at the Jews living in within the area of Palestine. And I saw one question about that.
Do we know what their preference is? Because if they are attached to the land because of biblical reference and all of the spiritual attachment to this land, would they be interested in staying on as citizens of Palestine?
You will have to ask them, and it depends on the context and the circumstances of an agreement to be signed. This is an issue to be negotiated. It's a very heavy one. It's a very heavy one. It's not an easy one, and we will have to ask them. And if Israel agrees to relocate them, then Israel will have to relocate them. If Israel does not agree, because the Palestinians would allow some, I don't know, enclaves, or it depends. It's negotiable. But the second part of my answer, it will be shorter, is that 60% of the West Bank is currently under Israeli authority of control of both security-wise and civil-wise. This is Area C, which is the largest part of the West Bank in terms of the interim agreement and the interim regime that was supposed to last for up to 5 years and is now in its 29th year already. Okay, so I think that we need to allow Palestinians to build in certain areas in Area C, to allow them to have some industry there, some agriculture there, and little by little allow an expansion of the Palestinian population, inhabitants in areas that are currently not permitted for them to extend their residences and their industries, etc. So this for the interim is part of the correction of an interim agreement that becomes almost permanent right now.
Thank you, Samieh. Same question to you, but also, would the Palestinian Authority, future state, be open to those 20% of settlers to stay on as full citizens? Or do we want the Palestinian state Jew-free?
Well, first of all, why is the 20%? I mentioned that before, and you all said that this is a blaming game. It's not a blaming game. It's not us who brought those settlers there in our land. First of all, we have to be clear, we want to end the occupation. That's number one. Okay? And that's clear. Secondly, we talked about the swap area, that some of the areas that will swap to the Israelis and some of the areas will be returned to the Palestinians. And the 80% that is Gilead talk about, in my opinion, they can accommodate the 20% as well. Okay.
So you would insist on the 20% moving, or being relocated?
Yes, they can accommodate within the 80%. This is one thing. Secondly, we can give them between 3 to 5 years to make up their mind whether to stay under the Palestinian sovereignty or to leave as an exit strategy for them to leave.
Sorry for the interruptions, but I'm confused.
But
so you're saying
we are not against any Jewish people to be part of the state of Palestine.
Okay, so you're open to them staying and living as citizens of Palestine?
Under the sovereignty of the state of Palestine.
Of course, yes. Okay, well, all right, thank you. All right, so if I could move now to, we've been talking about the solutions and so on, but we haven't talked about really the spoilers and whether there is enough political capital on the side of those who want to have peace to push back on the spoilers. So I have two questions, one for each. Gilead, politically speaking, I mean, look at the Israeli government today, not just what Netanyahu is saying, but what his coalition partners are saying. And this is an elected government. They have a lot of support in Israeli society. So again, as a lawyer, if you're looking at this, this is like as a case. Do you think we have reason to hope, to believe that we can have a different government, that a different government can actually be able to sign and implement the type of concessions we're talking about? Or is this a pipe dream and we'll end up in a situation like 94, 95 and what happened, Rabin and all of that? That's a question for you. And then the other question for Samieh is also about the spoilers. I mean, Hamas is a very obvious, and it's no longer a rogue fringe organization. 70% of Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, 70% are satisfied with Hamas performance. That's not a figure we can ignore. And in addition to this, we have Iran, and Iran is an integral part now of this conflict. So feel free to answer either or both questions.
Okay. I will start with your question about the government. I spent the vast majority of 2023 resisting the anti-democratic government and anti-democratic policy of my own government. Yes, you're right. It's an elected government. It was elected completely legally and inaugurated legally. But its politics are not only not my cup of tea, but they kind of assaulted the Israeli democratic foundations. And what happened is that this government on the 7th of October became responsible for the worst horrific failure in Israel's history, in Israel's 75, 76 years history since its establishment. And this is from the outset, I'm telling you that this government, I believe, will not be governing Israel by the end of 2024. So we start by correcting the policies of this government. This is an extremist, an extreme right government that expansionist and extremely orthodox religious, etc., with right-wingers that were never part of any government in Israel. So, I mean, you live in America, so you know that these constituencies do have their voices.
It's
sometimes
50%. It's at least 50% of the.
Yes. So I believe that another government, a new government, incoming government in Israel, will be ready to assume the task of resuming both negotiations and the process with regional actors, with the help of America, the EU, moderate Arab states, the Saudis, UAE, and others, Egypt, Jordan, of course. And I believe that if we are in the post-Gaza war era, soon enough, this will not be late to come in terms of what the White House is signaling recently in recent weeks, of what the EU is signaling, of what our interlocutors in the Arab world are signaling to us. This is the time to start looking again at the prospects of a modified Arab Peace Initiative API 2.0 or whatever, call it whatever you want, with an orderly process that moves forwards with benchmarks towards a better reality for Israelis and Palestinians alike, because we live currently in a tragedy of bloodshed. We have, I carry this on myself 24/7. It's, what it says, bring them home now. We have 136 abductees held hostages by a murderous terrorist organization called Hamas. And one thing is for sure, in the aftermath of the war in Gaza, Gaza will not be governed by Hamas. Hamas will not have control in Gaza, and Gaza will not be governed by Israel. So we will have to find a solution, and this solution would be the beginning of the larger solution of the Israeli-Palestinian dispute. Whether the actors are up to it right now, whether the actors are capable of doing it, no, they are not. Neither the Israeli government nor the current Palestinian leadership. So we will have to replace them by others.
You mentioned the hostages, and you know better than I how gloomy the mood is in Israel and how little appetite there is today among ordinary Israelis. Many of them supported peace before. How little appetite they have to even contemplate peace and withdrawals and so on. So if you're the lawyer of Netanyahu or any of his or any other person in the Likud, it doesn't have to be about Benjamin Netanyahu himself, but the right wing, those who do not want to see a Palestinian state, those who think, as Netanyahu said, between the river and sea, there's only one sovereignty, and that's Israel. Wouldn't you think that the hostages, the presence of Hamas, the presence of Iran, the weakness of the PA, all of these things provide you with easy political capital? And that ultimately you can build on this and prevent, while the other side, those who want peace, have kind of shaky pillars to work with. Some Arab states, who knows if they are willing or not. The US, who knows, with elections and so on. So all of the other PA, whether it will be reformed or not, all of these are less solid than what you on the right wing have. Don't you think it's a very difficult uphill battle for those who want peace in Israel?
It is an uphill battle, and you, from a political outlook, you're perfectly right. It's much easier to be on the right. Always. We will be strong. We will destroy our enemies, and even if we are isolated internationally, okay, we've been there for the last 2,000, 3,000 years. So we're not afraid of anything. That's very easy. It's much, much more challenging to make peace, to look for ways to resolve conflicts. Much more challenging, it provides dividends that I will elaborate on right now. You know, my starting point is not whether I would be pleased to have a Palestinian state for them, or to make peace, or whatever. My question is this, and I put this question to some of my friends on the right side of the political arena, and I'm asking them: look, this country was established, this state was established on the basis of being the democratic nation state of the Jewish people for generations to be. This state was established based on universal values of democracy, human rights, equality, etc. How do you preserve that without disengagement from the Palestinians? How do you preserve that when between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea, there are almost equal numbers of Jews and non-Jews? And this is the sole state in the world, the only state in the world that has a Jewish majority, and the Jewish majority has to be kept within boundaries that encompass a democracy, a democratic regime. All people are equal, all citizens are equal, and we have a borderline that beyond which this is not Israel anymore. So the only way to preserve this identity, this character of Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people, legitimate and recognized and secure for the generations to come, is to disengage from the Palestinians. And the only way for the Palestinians to assume their self-determination as a people, their peoplehood, is to disengage from the Israelis. And not a one state. One state is not a solution. It's a disaster for both Palestinians and Israelis. The two-state solution is still the very best solution for the problems that we face.
Thank you. Samieh, same question, but the mirror image of it. Today, it's a lot easier, and you know this better than I. In the West Bank, you know how people view the PA as a failure, what did negotiations achieve, and so on, while Hamas, the tough guys, have actually achieved results, and so on and so forth. So today, if you're on the other side, it's a lot easier, isn't it?
To do what? Okay.
It's a lot easier to make a case for Hamas and for the use of violence than it is for making peace.
I think, first of all, we have to be clear that we all, I think, want to stop the war immediately and to stop the suffering from the people from both sides. I think this is one thing that needs to be done, and for the international community, even the United States, number one, and others, European and others, and in the region, to go ahead and to do this immediately and to start the negotiation for the release of prisoners from both sides. I can give you a number that in the West Bank, since October 7 till now, 6,000 people were held in Israel, you know, already, but they released some of them, and still 2,900 is still there. Okay, so this is not for argument. I know, I don't know the war, I'm not a soldier, but at least we know that we are in a state of war, that they call it. Many things will happen. What we need is to stop this 100%, to stop the killing of the people and to stop the war. That's number one. Secondly, I agree with Gilead that we need the two states. We need the two states for two people. We need to be separated from the Israelis. We need to end the occupation and to have our own self-determination, our own state, side by side with the state of Israel. I think this goes without saying. But if you tell me that this will happen now with this government, in the past they used to say there is no partner on the Palestinian side. What can we say now? Do we have a partner on the Israeli side now? This goes without saying. There is no partner in the Israeli side. In the contrary, they gave us three alternatives, this government. whether to remain A and B and under our control and to do what we will tell you to do, or if you want to go out, we will facilitate you going out, or we trust you in your home, or we transfer you some other places. So we know what is in the mind of this government. There will be no peace with this government whatsoever. But what we have to do is to go and work within the regional partners and the international community in order to pave the way for this gradual things that Gilead talked about in order to smooth the way for the achievement of the two-state solution and to live side by side. About the spoilers, yes.
Yes, the spoilers is my question. Yes.
Yes, the spoilers in your question, I think Gilead knows more than me what happened for the creation of those spoilers here and there.
Yeah, but they're here now. They're here now.
And they were, like I said,
they've been firing missiles at Israel for months, right? So it seems they have an endless supply of weapons, and now they have also public support, and they have support of Iran, you know, technical, financial, political, and so on. What do we do with that? That's my question.
The establishment of the state of Palestine will eliminate anybody to interfere in our cause. So there is no place for the Iranian or others to interfere in our cause between us and the Israelis. If we have our state and we have our dignity and our freedom, there is no need for anybody to speak in our behalf. We need the region.
Is this an aspiration, or is there a path to achieve that?
Of course. As I said, I mean, the Americans, the British, everybody is talking about the recognition of the state of Palestine. Do it now and see how the result will be. We don't need any spoilers in our government, in our state. We need a state that works for the people of Palestine, to get them out of the misery that they're been given here 75 years till now. Let us look for the future, a better future, that we can live together. No spoilers. We don't want to attack anybody. We don't want to have any missiles to throw to anybody. We want to have our own state and secure and to work side by side with our neighbors. We have, like I said, many issues that we gather together, environmentally, infrastructure, education, everything in the world that we can be together, living side by side. This is our demand, and this is the only way to get rid of any spoilers or to give a chance for others to interfere in our behalf, our cause. They wanted to serve our cause as a whole, so they interfere here and there and make life miserable for us and for our neighbors as well.
You don't think, and I'll stop pushing back now, but that's my last attempt. You don't think that even if there is a recognition of Palestinian state, that this will push Hamas and Iran to actually intensify their spoiler effort? And if they do, what would the recognition do? How would the recognition help you push back Hamas?
Well, the international community and the regional players will be acting with us. They are the ones who are supporting this two-state solution, and they will stand behind us for this, and they will act as in our behalf for preventing that from happening. Because if we include the region with us and the international community with us to find the solution for this problem, and everybody is agreed that the two-state solution is the right solution for this problem, why not working toward that? Let us do it and find out whether there will be spoilers or not. But as long as it's not there, then the way is open for those.
All right. I'm looking at the questions and I'm looking at the time. We don't have much time left, but I have two questions. So I'm going to ask you, please, to try to answer both questions and to be brief. There is a question about the U.S. role. And again, I want you to apply the same realistic view. So we all know what we would like the U.S. to do. The question is not about that. The question is about what's the U.S. likely to be able to do, given the political landscape in the U.S., and given that we have presidential elections coming and uncertainty about the outcome, which is the unfortunate nature of elections anyway, right? So there is that question. But then there is another question about the narrative. I have here somebody's talking about, Palestinians. It's not just the Likud that says from the river to the sea. It's not just Netanyahu. We have a large contingent of Palestinians and Palestinian intellectuals who keep saying from the river to the sea. And that's, you know, the Israelis hear this and think genocidal intent, right? So what do we do about the narrative? And what's your assessment of the US role?
First,
I'm,
you want to start?
okay, go ahead.
Okay. So the US at the beginning, you know, we know for sure that the US is biased toward the Israelis. We asked them to be fair. We asked them to interfere in a fairness way in order to give the legitimate right for the Palestinian people according to the international law. That's their role, and we welcome them to be the party, the main party that will come and solve this problem. You know, we have no problem against the Americans for this. But please be fair, okay, in your approach toward this. At least fulfill the things that you said. You know, we're not putting anything in the mouth, but what they said, please fulfill it. That's one thing. And the second question, Al-Fidin.
Palestinian narrative, the
Yes.
rhetoric about Jews, the anti-Semitism.
Okay. In 1988, as far as I know, the PLO recognized the state of Israel.
Yeah.
And within the Oslo Accord, also, they recognized the state of Israel. And the state of Israel.
But not as a Jewish state, not as a homeland for the Jewish people. It just recognized Israel has a right to live in peace and security. Not that that helped a lot, but anyway.
But that's in the mind of Abu Mazen and in the PA that they will recognize the state of Israel. Now, the majority are Jewish, of course. What are we thinking about? I mean, Gilead just talked about the Arabs there. They don't want to leave. So if they want them to leave somewhere, let them do. I mean, they don't want to leave there. So we will recognize this as long as they recognize the state of Palestine. The mutual recognition between the two is the key, without going here and there and trying to find another solution. The recognition of the two sides to each other, that will solve the whole problem.
And you think Palestinians or a majority of Palestinians are ready to support recognition of Israel as a Jewish homeland?
If they recognize the state of Palestine, I think that will be the case.
Okay, thank you. Gilead, the US and the narrative.
Okay, so let me start with the U.S. But before that, you know, there were I saw a couple of questions that I will not address now, but if I may, I would like to refer to.
Please do.
You know, Madeline asked about Camp David, etc. So I would recommend a book called Within Reach: The Israeli-Palestinian Peace Negotiations that I've written. It's on Amazon. And there was another question of Fatima about the spoilers. I've also published a book on spoilers and coping with spoilers in Arab-Israeli negotiations. And it's also on Amazon. I co-authored it with Professor Galia Golan. So if I may just do that. Now about the US. The US role is indispensable. There's no way to avoid saying that, and there's no way to make peace between Israelis and Palestinians without massive hands-on US involvement. Now, I know this is an election year. I know that on a 10 items on a priority list, we might find ourselves either out of this list or one of the last items on the list. But I think that hands-on means that the United States should put a plan and a process and impose it on all parties concerned, not alone with the EU, perhaps with other actors and significant entities in the region. I know it is adverse to the trend of pulling out of the Far East and the Middle East, etc., a trend of the last, I'd say, decade or so. But there's no other way. There's no other body or entity or a political leader that could assume this job. As to the narratives, I've seen a lot of misunderstandings about what the narrative is, from the river to the sea. Which river and what sea? Most of the protesters do not know what river we are talking about, where is it, what was Israel before. I mean, it's like, there's a lot of fake news here, and this is the era, we know this is the era of truth decay. So I'm not really surprised by that, by this total ignorance about the conflict. But the fact of the matter is that when you say that the Israeli government is an expansionist one or whatever, or that Netanyahu says that we will never get out, etc. He never, in his 16 years in government, he did not annex 1 square inch of officially, I mean, well, I'm not talking about incremental pushing of the settlements. I'm being honest with you. So the narratives, if we do not talk to one another, if we do not tie ourselves to a process of changing the reality, then the narratives become very extremist on both sides and almost non-bridgeable. The narratives are a question of accommodating mindsets. And if we do put the effort needed and the funding needed to reach out to the 15 million people between the river and the sea, we might find out that accommodating mindsets towards reconciliation, towards a better future, towards normalization is not impossible. We can do that. But you have to remember, and that's for you, Ezzeddin, that Iran is not a spoiler. Hezbollah is not a spoiler. Hamas is not a spoiler. These are not spoilers. These are entities and leaderships that are bound to annihilate Israel. I'm not calling that a spoiler. These are enemies of Israel because they want the destruction of my country, my people, and my family. So until further notice, the spoilers come from other places. And the Iran and its proxies in their hegemonic quest in the Middle East and beyond, this is a real existential threat. But there's also another existential threat, and that is, if we do not resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, this will become an existential threat for Palestinians and Israelis alike.
Well, thank you both very much. I wonder with one of the participants, Hannah Brooks, if the fact that you two have known each other for a long time, have negotiated either from, across the divide, if this has affected your own narrative. Are you an exception, or are you a representative of the two communities that you supposedly represent?
I can speak for myself. So Samieh would say what he says. Samieh is my friend since 1995, okay? And with most of the people that I negotiated in the Palestinian leadership, like Abu Allah and Saib Arikat and others, I'm still friends. Those who are alive, you know, regrettably, most of the people that we negotiated with on my side, on Samieh's side, are not with us anymore. But it's not us the problem. We can talk to one another as friends. We understand the problem. We understand the concerns and the fears of the other side, and we try to accommodate that. But it's a matter of absence of leadership, of strong, courageous leadership that takes risks in order to make the future better for their own constituencies.
Thank you. Samieh?
I agree, and I think that we represent ourselves first of all. Yes, we were part of the negotiation before. We still believe that we can reach an agreement, and it is there. We have many proposals that put in the table. We need the United States of America just to come down and to be fair and to strike a deal between us, and not decided like what we witnessed before, like the Trump plan and others that wanted to impose on us. Something is we cannot live with. We need a solution that we can live with both, in order for the new generation, for other generation to follow up and to live side by side with each other.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you both for your time and for your candidness. It's a pleasure. I am looking forward to hosting you in person on campus, and then the students will have an opportunity to engage directly with you, and then you will have the real tough questions from them. So please be prepared for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Shalom, salam, inshallah.
Salam.
All right.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
Okay.